Yo, yo.
How are we?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a minute.
It has been a little while.
The Mentalist one was so great. We needed time to.
I think this one was just so difficult, man.
Yeah, dude,
It took me so long to put this list together.
yeah, it's funny because a basketball stadium compared to a football stadium compared to a baseball, it's also different. And
Yeah.
even hockey, especially if you're judging having not been there, like a hockey rink, it could be the same place. Like Crypto.com Arena
Mhm.
Staples Center feels so different with like the Kings versus the Lakers. Even the Lakers versus the Clippers feels really different.
Yeah.
So it's
You know why that is? I'll explain a little bit later, actually.
okay.
I heard an explanation for that, which makes a
I
lot of sense.
Yeah, I feel like there's things that I like feel like I could guess that they do, but we'll see because mine would just be speculation. But
Okay.
um, and you probably have an advantage, or maybe not an advantage, but with baseball, were you judging, were you factoring in heavily the fact that you've been to a bunch of places?
No, the one that I chose is not one I've been to. Yeah,
Ah,
it's the one that's on the top of my list of where I want to go.
okay. All
Yeah.
right, this will be interesting. We may have four different ones
Yeah, we
because
definitely could.
there
Um,
might even be a good chance that we do.
yeah.
Um,
Some of them I don't know the actual name, but I know like what I know because they change so often. So
it's that's why I looked at a list of like
yeah.
just because I was curious, ranking of the top NFL stadiums,
Hmm.
and it's like I totally forgot. Like I knew Seattle changed their name, but I didn't realize that the Steelers one is a different name.
Yeah, that one
It's like
stinks. That's
there's
up there with the Staples Center losing the Staples as like
yeah,
one of the
bro.
worst.
It legitimately, every time I'm watching an NBA game and it's LA, they always show the overhead shot and like the Staples with the red was so
Hmm.
iconic, and now it's like a different color. It says crypto.com. Like
So
you went from
bad.
something that's iconic, but you changed it to a genuinely bad name.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the fact that you changed it, period. But now like crypto.com arena just
Crypto.com is bad. You can't
sounds
have a website
terrible.
name as a
It's
sponsor.
terrible. It's terrible.
Another bad one is Colorado used to be the Pepsi Center,
Oh,
which was really cool, and like I think they call it like the can or something. And now
yeah.
it's Ball Arena.
I don't like that.
Another tough one. But
It's all right.
apart from baseball, I think everything I ranked was based on everything I chose was based on like TV
Yeah.
viewing.
So everything I chose is based on TV. So
Okay.
it'll probably warrant uh explaining a couple things because there might be things we looked for that we didn't.
Hmm.
It just might be interesting, like the way we approach ranking somewhere we haven't been, like
Yeah, true.
what we were looking for, what we were thinking about. So
True.
yeah.
Okay. What do you want to start with?
Um, let's start with baseball.
Okay. You want to hear mine first, or do you want to reveal yours?
You do yours
And
first.
we did say no Boston.
Yeah, no Boston
We should
Arena
probably say that ahead of time
because I would have chosen
before.
Fenway.
Yeah, so would I,
Yeah,
obviously.
like that would have been a no brainer.
Um,
I would have chosen the Garden too.
I
At
may
least
have
for
I may
at
have
least for
chosen.
basketball.
Yeah, I may have chosen for the
Now,
Celtics.
honestly, I probably would have chosen it for both, but that's fine.
Did
Um,
you? I guess we'll get into it. I'll spoil ahead of time though. I There was one that I could have chosen for multiple, but I intentionally chose all different. So
yeah,
because I thought that would be a little more interesting.
yeah. Um, I would say there was one that's kind of in the conversation for both for me, but it wasn't. I never really came close to choosing it for
Hmm.
both. So,
Okay. Um. So we're doing baseball. Okay.
mhm.
Do you want to go? Do you want? Did you want to go first? Or do you want me?
I say I want you to go first.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
That's all right.
Um.
We'll edit this out. Nobody will know
I'm choosing what I consider to be my number one wish list baseball stadium.
to visit.
It is now referred to as Oracle Park. It in my brain is always AT&T, though. San Francisco.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Yeah, that's just
That
one
is
like
such a good one.
I think for me one of the biggest things, and there were a few. After you reveal yours, maybe we'll talk about some of the honorable mentions. But um, it, a big thing for me is kind of the uniqueness of stadiums. I don't love some of the newer stadiums where it's just a sort of uniform outfield, and they're also starting to kind of go back to more unique stuff recently. But you have the the right field wall is super unique. You have that weird angle in right center. I don't know if they still have it out there, but you at one point at least you had the glove in left field, which was always super cool. And I don't know that anyone's ever hit one into the glove, but it was always like something you could imagine
Yeah,
happening. They had a
yeah,
giant Coke bottle out there at one
yeah.
point. Obviously, McCovey Cove is behind right field, and then it also just looks super. Like I think it's brick walls and stuff like
Mhm.
it's just such a nice looking stadium. You know exactly who you're tuning in for. Obviously, them playing the three World Series kind of helps give it
Yeah,
sort of like a big game feel. And then I've
yeah.
also seen videos where people will go up and they're at a game and they'll go up into kind of the upper decks and just kind of pan around, and it's just such a beautiful view.
Hmm.
This is by far the stadium I want to go to the most. There are a
Hmm.
couple other ones near the top, but if someone said to me tomorrow you can only visit one stadium that you've never been to, and after that you'll never go to a new stadium again, I would in a heartbeat choose San Francisco.
Hmm. That's a really good pick. That's a really good pick. I think there's something so cool about like a field that's right on the water like that.
Yeah. Oh
Like being
yeah.
able to hit a home run into the water. There's like the angles that they show, like you can show like from a drone above the water looking
Yep.
into the stadium. Like it just looks so cool from around it.
Does.
And then
Yeah.
being in there, that's like, and
Yeah.
I will say one of the, I think the best parts about baseball stadiums is the uniqueness of each one,
Oh,
right? Like
absolutely.
I think there's two levels to it. Obviously, hockey, basketball, football, the field is always exactly the same, or the court or the ice. It's all the same dimensions.
Hmm.
The way the walls and the dimensions are always different in baseball just makes it so interesting, makes each park feel so special. And I also just think the unique attributes of baseball fields are noted more than any other. So
Oh yeah.
my favorite field um, is Wrigley, which is
Yeah.
a basic pick, but I just like it's just too iconic. And I know the
Yeah.
field dimensions might not be super unique, but the ivy wall, the seats on like the buildings
Yeah, that's
like
pretty cool.
in the outfield is so cool. And then I also feel like baseball more than any other sport history, like the history of baseball is just so rich. Um, and so a field that's so iconic. It makes me think about watching playoff games that the Cubs play at home. Um, there's just something so special about that feel. It's a place I would love to go. You have a nice little.
Trying to see. I have a ball from Wrigley. I caught a ball at Wrigley when I went. I caught two balls, but I gave one away. I don't know
Where you put it.
where it is. Let me check
Yeah,
one thing.
go ahead. I gotta check.
It's somewhere up here. I must have put it away though. I think at one point I used it to play catch with, and then I was like, I probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, I have a ball somewhere. It's
Yeah,
super. It's a super cool field.
yeah. I mean, and you haven't been there, obviously. I have not. It just, it's just such a destination. Like you think baseball, you think Wrigley Field, the Ivy Wall is just so iconic. The Cubs are
It
just such an
is,
iconic team. Um, there's just so much about it. It just feels like the ultimate destination
and there
for a
is.
baseball
It
park.
isn't. Maybe the dimensions aren't as crazy as some others, but it is relatively. I mean, obviously the Ivy's unique, right? But it also is interesting because I think right field is farther than
Yeah,
left field, which is
yeah,
different. They do have some weird indents in the wall that can
yeah.
be make for interesting plays, and then it's also an interesting field because the bullpens, or yeah, I don't think they're on the field. I believe the bullpens are underneath the stands. Yeah, they are.
In right
So
field, right?
in both
Oh,
now, yeah.
oh,
So um so they're you can't see the pitchers or anything like they're just underneath you and they come out.
that's cool.
Um I think an interesting so I went to two games at Wrigley. One of them I went to and sat in the outfield,
Hmm.
and you have to get there so early because the outfield is general admission. You just buy a ticket for the outfield, and then it's first come, whoever gets the
Interesting.
seat gets there. So we went 2 hours before, got pretty good seats. Like I said, got a couple balls during batting practice because you're there so far ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Um, and in the second game, we went and we got kind of last minute tickets because we had gone to the White Sox game before. We took the train over to Wrigley and saw a Sunday night baseball game, and that was one of the best games I've ever, probably the best baseball game I've ever seen in person.
Was that the walk-off
Yeah,
grand slam?
it was so, and even just watching it, it was so awesome because Wrigley's not super huge, so we were way up by the press box, but it was not even a bad seat at all. It wasn't like we couldn't see what was going on. We were
Yeah.
looking from directly behind, and you could see
Hmm.
all the neighborhoods around in the background. And then, but it was also nighttime, so you had the lights
Hmm.
like shining right on the field. It was super cool. And then, yeah, we saw a walk off grand slam, down to 2 strikes, 2 outs, bases loaded, down 3, grand slam. It was just
Man.
like it was just so it was like a magical Wrigley moment that we
Yeah.
got to experience. So it I had a feeling that you might pick Wrigley, which maybe is part of why I went for San Francisco, just to kind of
Yeah.
spice it
Yeah.
up a little bit. But right now, of the parks that I've been to, Wrigley's my number 2, and the only reason it's not one is because um, Fenway is Boston.
Yeah.
The other awesome thing about Wrigley is Wrigleyville around it. Like you
Uh-huh.
leave the stadium and there's like bars, there's like obviously like Cubs stores. It's a really, really nice little area around it. Then they've done a really awesome job of
Huh.
making an area where you can kind of like hang out before the game, after the
Yeah.
game, and just kind of like spend a day, especially like if you're coming in from another part of Illinois or like Wisconsin or something, and you want to spend a whole day just kind of at Wrigley Park, you absolutely can.
Yeah. That's so cool.
So
Hey, it's hard to go wrong. Hard to
yeah,
go
it's an
wrong with
awesome,
Wrigley.
awesome field. The only kind of negative about Wrigley is not even that it's old, because they have done a much better job, I think, renovating it than they did with Fenway. But early in the season, like before the ivy grows in, it's a little bit like weird looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you get into the summer, and yeah,
It is great.
such a beautiful field. A
100%.
couple of the other ones that I was thinking of were San Diego. I really like San Diego's park,
Yeah. It's a
kind of a
cool one.
fun one.
Yeah.
Camden Yards is one that's a newer ballpark, but they did such a great job making it kind of that vintage field. And I haven't been there, but that's up there on the list too, where people have said Camden Yards is just a beautiful place to go watch a baseball game. And anything else? Minnesota, I kind of like. That's a good newer one that's done a good job being a little bit unique. And then Atlanta is another one. I've been down to Georgia twice in the last year, and neither time I was able to catch a Braves game, but I really want to go to that stadium as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Another newer one that they've done a good job with, I think.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Honestly, San Francisco is the other one that just comes close for me, which you
Yeah,
chose. I like it's just a good choice.
yeah.
Um,
All right.
after that, yeah.
Should we move on to one
Let's
of
do an
your
arena.
sports?
Yeah, let's do basketball.
Okay. So this is a good opportunity. Do you want to go first with this one, since it's right up your alley? I
Yeah.
want to know what you've picked. This was
Yeah.
a hard one, because I think and for me this was the hardest one. I assume for you probably NHL was the hardest one, because
Yeah, because I had
they're
no idea.
inside, and they're not necessarily either of our
And I
prime
don't watch
sports.
enough hockey.
Right.
Like I can think of watching plenty of NBA games at every
Mhm.
arena. So part of this, which maybe is unfair, but part of my deciding on a arena has to do somewhat with the court. So the court matters
Yeah.
because it's just like the general feel of the arena. And so I can talk about this after. There's some that I don't like, and I think it's a mix of the lighting and the court and just the way it all looks when you're watching. So it was really hard for me to pick, but the one I settled on was Wells Fargo, which is the Philadelphia
Really?
76ers
Yeah, that's not bad.
arena. Yeah, it's one of the bigger ones, which isn't necessarily a huge reason I picked it, because the variation in capacity for most of these arenas is really small. Like the
Mhm.
biggest one is 20,000 something, the smallest is 16,000 something. Most of them are in like the 18,000 range. But Wells Fargo is just big. I like the court. I just like how bright it is, and it just something feels great about watching it. I always think like every one of these arenas, you experience it at least watching on TV at its best in the playoffs.
Yeah.
One of the things I wish that they would do still is it used to be they'd put T-shirts on the seats of these during the playoffs, and everybody would wear them.
Yeah.
People don't wear them anymore. I don't get why. I went to 2 playoff games last year for the Celtics. They put T-shirts on every seat. Almost nobody wears the T-shirts anymore.
Wow.
And it just was one of my favorite things to turn on a playoff game, and the entire crowd all like being uniform in color, like they're all wearing the same thing. It just made it feel like it just made that playoff feel to me. And I love watching Sixers games there. Obviously, Philly fans also like just are crazy.
Yeah.
And so you get that watching basketball. There's been some amazing games in the Wells Fargo Center as well, which has helped it. But I think there's a layout too. Most arenas are pretty generic, and you have like your lower section. You'll have some sort of like suite in the middle, and then like your upper deck. That's generally how most arenas are.
Mhm.
And I really like it. looking at pictures, it seems like Philly's lower section seems like it kind of goes farther than others, and I think it just kind of creates like a fishbowl feel that just feels like there's so many people there. Like a lot of arenas feel like a bunch of small sections clumped together. I like that in the pictures. It just kind of Philly feels a little different. Like it just feels like there's more people.
Hmm.
And when you like look at pictures and get a feel for it, it's not super significant, but I like that. And just the look, the layout of the court. I'm just a big fan. So
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Obviously, I can't criticize too much because I'm not an aficionado, but I was kind of clicking on some highlights, and yeah, it's a good solid pick. And I think there is something to be said a little bit about some, especially when it's something like this. I think um, not not history doesn't necessarily matter, but I think there is sort of a different feel when it's one of the kind of like historic NBA teams as opposed to obviously no disrespect to certain teams, but maybe someone like the Grizzlies where it's a little bit less like they're a little bit more of a newer team, and
yeah,
you know even though the arenas aren't the same as they were like at the beginning of the NBA, it still maybe sometimes feels like it's a little bit more
yeah,
of that basketball feel at an
yeah,
arena that hosts a more historic team.
yeah.
All right, so my selection, and this we can kind of get into the Los Angeles thing as well. My selection is Madison Square Garden for the NBA, and this was a tough one because I think up until recently, it probably would have been easier for me to choose MSG, but they do have some court designs that are a little odd. I would like if they just went straight up with the traditional Knicks court. It's just I don't know, it's just such a unique um, viewing experience. And so the reason for that, which ties into Los Angeles, is from what I've heard, they have a patent on like this lighting system that basically like highlights the court and makes the stands look darker. And
Hmm.
so the reason that the Clippers and Lakers look different is because the Lakers bought the rights to use that and the
Hmm.
Clippers didn't.
Hmm.
Is that what you've heard as well?
I haven't heard it, but you can notice it. I was going to
Yeah.
say that the
So
biggest
that's
difference
why
in the
which
Clippers
when
is
you
it
hear
feels
that,
so,
it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, which is so it's funny. So I was going to say when it's a very unpopular opinion. My two of my least favorite places to watch on
Or
TV is Lakers and
and
Knicks.
Knicks.
I
Okay.
hate that. I just really don't like the dark
Huh.
feel. And I didn't realize it was like that, but I was going to say it like the Clippers arena feels so much brighter.
Yeah.
But
So
so you can talk about yeah.
I think the reason I like it is because when there's a big shot or something like that. So when I think of Madison Square Garden at its best, I kind of think of like the Carmelo days with the Knicks.
Yeah,
And
sure,
obviously a lot of people are probably going to go back farther than that, but for me that's like when the Knicks
sure,
have
sure.
been the best or the most fun to
Yeah.
watch. And so I think of some of those big shots, and it's similar for like the Staples Center, but it does. So while you're watching it, it's sort of you're focused on the players, you're focused on the game, and then they hit that big shot, and which ESPN does a great job of this. They do that kind of zoom out where
Mm,
you get like the whole view and you see the people start like standing up and going crazy. And I like that when that shot happens, all of a sudden you become aware of the crowd,
mm,
if that makes sense. Like because they
mm.
do the zoom out and they all stand up and whatever,
Yeah,
and it's maybe not quite as focused on the court. All of a
yeah.
sudden you get to kind of that the impact of the crowd going crazy is a little bit more sudden and a
Hmm.
little bit more like surprising, which I think adds to it.
Hmm.
And then also just kind of not necessarily from a viewing perspective on TV, but when you look at like pictures on Google or whatever, and it's that Knicks court with the Madison Square Garden scoreboard and the iconic roof. I just think that's such a cool
Yeah.
visual.
It's such an iconic
Yeah,
place. I mean, people call like the Mecca of basketball all the time
yeah.
is New York and especially Madison Square Garden. Um, so it is really cool. It just the darkness I've just never liked. I kind of like
Mm.
being able to see the crowd. I like when it's brighter. Um, it's just a more enjoyable watching experience to me. A couple others that aren't on this level, but Golden State, their arena always feels
Mm.
darker to me. Um, or it always did. Chase Center sometimes is better depending on the court design. And the United Center, which is the Bulls,
Yeah.
which is a little different, but those are two that just kind of feel dark, and I don't love it. Um,
I also
and
don't love the feel of when the Bulls play at home. I don't know what
yeah,
it is about. It's not
it's
necessarily the darkness, but it's just I don't
right.
know.
It's something I don't love. I can't explain it. I will say this maybe is unfair to say, but I equate it to watching Madison Square Garden games. Most stadiums have like music that they play during the game,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's like a defense, there's someone on some sort of like not piano, but like synth, and they play like
Yeah.
notes, and it goes with. I find the Madison Square Garden like music, whatever you want to call it, incredibly annoying. It bothers me like crazy. It makes me want to
Uh,
watch games on mute every time I watch the Knicks play.
Maybe
Um,
that's an advantage I have then, because I don't have any
yeah,
association with it.
and I have no idea if it's one of those things that most people probably don't even notice it as they're watching. But it was one of those like I noticed it one time and it just started to annoy me so much that now every time I watch the Knicks play, I have to like fight to just not get mad about it.
Yeah.
But it's so iconic that it's you have to respect that pick, and I'm sure
Yeah.
it'd be a great place to go.
This
But
was also the one that I could have had as an NHL because I think it's also one where, um, like we were kind of talking about, a lot of them look so similar because there's not those unique features like there is in baseball,
mhm,
where there's something about when the Rangers play at home. If I had, if you could somehow like make it so that I didn't know it was the Rangers, I would
yeah,
know exactly where they're playing because it's just so easy to tell. And they also their big moments, their big goals and stuff just seem to pop more. Maybe because of the way the arena is facilitated, maybe it's better for audio or something. I'm not quite sure, but
yeah,
whenever I watch highlights of like biggest goals and stuff like that, if a Rangers one gets in there, it just steals the show so much.
yeah. It's an iconic one.
But as I said, I chose to keep it separate. Um, yeah,
Mhm. Any honorable mentions for basketball
Honestly,
for that, or
the Staples Center I considered, but I couldn't. It was a
doesn't
quick no
exist?
because they changed the name. So maybe a little bit petty of me because it's still
I
the
like
same
it.
arena,
Yeah,
but
I
it's just not the same to me anymore.
the vibe feels different.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel the same. Um, Trying to think, something about Miami is kind of nice. I think um, a lot of it for me, I think it ties into kind of like big basketball moments when I was growing up. So obviously, like with
Hmm.
LeBron and Wade, and like there's a lot of big
Yeah,
games there. So it sticks out to me. Whereas something like I was saying, like the Grizzlies or even like the Bucks, even though they're good now, like when I was more kind of tuned into the big games, they weren't really there. So I don't even really have like a image in my head as much.
mhm.
Um, I'm slightly surprised you didn't make a little loophole and sneak your favorite team in here because they're
I came
not from
close.
Boston.
I came close. I'm not gonna lie to you. They were my honorable mention. I wanted to do it, but um, I think something about the way they spread out their seats, it feels like the arena from pictures, it doesn't look quite as like tall. And I
Hmm.
think there's something about it that just like the Wells Fargo, it felt like a bigger, it just
Okay.
felt cooler. But Thunder with the Paycom Center, which in my is Chesapeake Arena to me, because that's what it
Yeah, I
always
was gonna
was.
say that didn't sound right when you said Paycom.
Yeah, it is one of my favorites. And part of it is I still love it, but like you said, it's grown up. They changed the court. Oh gosh,
I
2 years
don't I
ago.
don't like how many different court designs teams have now. That's like I said with
There's so many.
when the Knicks wear those dark uniforms when they change the court, like it just looks
Yeah,
weird. That's the only time that I haven't immediately been able to know when it was
what
a
it,
Knicks or Rangers game that they're playing at Madison Square Garden is when they changed that court and it just threw everything off.
yeah, it's weird. And so they also like the Thunder only have one court that they use this year. And it's been the same court the last 2 or 3 years. I like the one they had before a little
Mhm.
better. The wood paneling is a slightly different color. Thought it was a little better before. They changed up a little bit the look of the paint and the color of the paint, and I liked all of it better. There was sort of the league has like styles on the courts that will change over time, and so what it is now is you have this style that the Thunder do and a lot of other teams do it. And then there's like the name of the arena off to the side on the baseline
Hmm.
that a lot of teams do. I don't know how recently they started doing it. But and I don't know how to explain it, but the paint that they used to have, there was a style they did, and I know the Raptors did it as well. And I think there were maybe another one or two arenas that did it, but there was something about that paint that just like it just looked so cool the way it would contrast with the court. And then I mean, I grew up like I fell in love with basketball watching like those Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook playing in Chesapeake Arena. The OKC fans are just electric.
Because I have nothing else to do.
Exactly, like they have nothing else. And so playoff games like with that crowd, there's just it's so good to me. And so I love that arena.
You
I
remember
want
what
to
that was like?
what
Playoff
watching them in the
games at
playoffs.
home?
I do remember what it's like. All right, it hasn't been that long. And there's a chance we have them this year. So um, well, it just it's a special place in my heart. I hope to go there someday. But for the sake of objectivity, I said Philadelphia,
Not many people dream of going to the middle of nowhere.
but I'm one of them. Hey, it's cheaper too.
That's true.
It's a cost
True.
efficient dream to have.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
So yeah. All right.
Okay. Why don't
Want
we
to do one
go
of
to
your sports?
NHL? Yeah, I want to go to
Yeah,
NHL
yeah,
next. So like I said, I could have picked Madison Square Garden for this one as well.
yeah.
And I think I probably do like it as a hockey rink better than a basketball arena, but I had another option for hockey and I didn't for basketball really.
Mhm.
Um, and this is going to be really tough because it goes against a lot of what I believe
Oh,
in,
I know you're gonna.
but I'm going to go with Scotiabank Arena in Toronto.
No.
Yeah, and maybe maybe part of it is that I just have so many good memories of watching the Bruins destroy the Leafs' dreams there.
Uh,
But also, like I was saying with New York, it has kind of that big game feel now that the Leafs are actually good and losing in the playoffs again. And when they do score and their fans just get so excited that they finally got to see a goal in the playoffs, it's like it's a really good atmosphere. And then you know even when it's completely silent because they're losing in like another game 7 or something like that, it's still a pretty cool view and it's a cool looking place. Um, so they may not have won a playoff series since 2004, but they have a really good arena, and you got to give them props for that.
gotta give him props for that. That's something
You
to be
got
proud
something
of for
going for
sure.
you.
You got to celebrate something when you can't win.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
okay, where do they rank on your least favorite hockey teams? Like, who are the hated
So in
Canadians? Have to
terms
be
of
one,
in
right?
terms of hating hockey teams, the Leafs are not that high. Um, because they have relatively likable players, I think. I love their uniforms. I think their uniforms are absolutely awesome. The thing with the Leafs is just that their fans are so insufferable online that
Um,
um and part of it is that this new playoff system, well, it's not even new anymore, but the current playoff system,
yeah,
the Bruins are facing the Leafs all the time and it's like they keep beating them, they keep beating them, they keep beating them. But if one time they don't, then the Leafs like they're gonna act like the Leafs have never lost, you
yeah,
know? And
yeah,
I just it's so annoying. So and I'm getting tired of seeing them in the playoffs.
yeah.
It's just like I just don't like seeing the same teams over and over and over every
Mhm.
year because it's being forced. If it was happening naturally and they were meeting in like the conference finals or whatever, then that's great. That's how really truly great rivalries are formed. But you can't just force a rivalry to happen by like artificially.
Mm.
So I don't have an exact number, but like I don't hate the Toronto Maple Leafs as a franchise
Yeah,
necessarily in the same way that like I hate the New York Yankees or I hate the Los Angeles Lakers.
yeah.
Um, the Canadians are maybe by default up there just because historically that's the biggest one, but recently it hasn't been as heated. I mean, they had a great game last night, which
Mhm.
was kind of old school, but besides that, it
Okay,
hasn't really been that heated. I feel like because
sure.
the Canadians haven't been great, and also because they're trying to get rid of some of the physicality in the game, so we kind of lose part of that
Yeah,
aspect. The Canucks are kind of up there, but the Canucks have been so pathetic lately that it's kind of hard. Like you feel
it's
bad a
hard.
little
Yeah, it's hard
bit.
to hate a team that's just that bad.
Um, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's tough with the new NHL
Yeah.
without some of this physicality because you don't really have the same type of players that there used to be, where guys were just out there running around trying to kill people, and it's like, oh, I hate that player. Like I hate watching him play.
Mhm.
I don't love the Lightning because I don't like some of their players, but I also really like some of their players, so they're kind of a tough one as well.
Mhm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I guess the Canadians are probably the default choice just because
Mhm.
of historically, but just after that, it's kind of hard to find any teams that I really truly dislike
Yeah.
just because of the way the league is kind of, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate.
We're losing rivalries in sports. There's
I
not as many.
agree.
There's really only two rivalries left in the NBA, it feels like. And I say left, they're both newer. It's
Hmm.
like, and if it just, yeah, we've lost too many. It's a shame.
Yeah, I agree. Like, remember when Patriots Jets used to be like a huge deal?
Yeah.
Now it's like
I mean, the
they
Jets have
both
been
kind of
terrible
stink.
for so long. Now the
Yeah,
Jets look like they could be good this year, but
I know, but it
um,
still just doesn't quite have the same.
yeah. But even like the
Oof.
Ravens, Steelers, when they both had these like physical,
Yeah,
dominant defenses, used to be like, what a rivalry. Now it's just,
yeah.
eh, it's
So
fine. Like it's a rivalry, but yeah.
right. Yeah, so Scotiabank Arena is my
Okay.
choice. And I think some of it, like we are kind of saying earlier, is just kind of like the feel when you turn on a
Yeah.
game
Right.
there. And part of that might also be because they do have a lot of like the national Canadian games there.
Mhm.
Um, So they have a lot of the big like Saturday night games,
Sure.
whatever. And I do think there is something to be said for as insufferable as the fans are online. Like they obviously care a ton about their team, so they fill up the building all the time, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they create a good atmosphere.
Yeah. Mine, which I have no idea how you'll feel about this, and
Okay,
but I'm gonna go with the United Center,
that's a good one.
the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Not that this is huge with like the arenas, but like the history of the Blackhawks, they are an iconic franchise.
Hmm.
Um, there's the added element. I just picture watching like the Stanley Cup when the Bruins played there,
Right.
and it just felt like a menacing place,
It
like a
is.
menacing arena to go to and
Yeah.
play when it's just lit up with the red. Um, there's just something iconic about it, and I haven't watched enough hockey to have a good like a lot of experience with a lot of different arenas, but
Hmm.
I can still remember being in middle school watching those Stanley Cup games, the triple overtime game that happened there. Um, it's just kind of it feels like a really, like I said, menacing, just sort of tough place to go play. And it is an iconic arena as well, like with Jordan and the Bulls, just Chicago being such a good sports town. So as much as I said I don't really love it with the Bulls, I do think
Yeah.
it lives up to the hype to me for hockey, and with the Blackhawks.
Yeah. So this is probably sort of similar to like my MSG basketball pick, where um, everything you said is absolutely true for what you were talking about. It's just a case where they have been so bad for a couple of years now,
Yeah,
where it's like and it's hard for fans to get that to kind of artificially
yeah,
create that where it's still a great arena, it's still a great hockey city, but it's just not quite the same. But when they were cooking for those like 6 years or so, when they won 3 cups, they were in conference finals and they were going. That place was, from what I've heard in like interviews and stuff, it was an absolute nightmare to play in.
oh yeah,
They have one of, if not the best anthem singers in the league, one of a few teams that I know of that have like a consistent anthem singer, and
oh,
he just belts it out. He has such a good voice, and it's just super powerful.
cool.
Um, they go nuts for it.
Hmm.
It's Yeah, when they're good, there's probably no tougher place to play than the
Yeah,
United Center, especially. And I mean, you got to consider this for hockey as well, like the goal horns and stuff. When they were making those runs, and you hear they've got a really high pitched, shrill, intense goal horn, and for if you get that wrong, it can sound really bad. But theirs sounds really menacing, like you were kind of saying.
yeah,
Like when you give up a goal there, and that
you
thing is
feel
blaring at you,
you
and the
feel
fans
it.
are going crazy, it must feel horrible. And then they have one of the best goal songs in the league. They got Chelsea Dagger going, and it's just like an absolute madhouse there. Um,
Yeah,
I think is that the Madhouse on Madison? Is that I don't know.
I don't
Whatever.
know.
It goes nuts when they're good.
Yeah,
For me, I absolutely considered it. I think it is just the fact that they haven't been
yeah,
great in a while.
makes
But
sense.
like for someone like you who isn't as
Doesn't want, yeah,
doesn't watch it as much, and it obviously makes sense why those games would stick out,
yeah,
because I don't know that there's an atmosphere like it when
yeah,
they are going.
right. Like with how much I watch, I still when I think of the Blackhawks,
Hmm.
I think of those Patrick Kane, Jonathan
Yeah.
Taves, those teams that were so good.
And
So
just like I was saying with like the compilations, when you watch a compilation, especially of like overtime goals, because they had a few there, when they score an overtime goal at the United Center in the playoffs and the lights are flashing, the place is going crazy, that horn is blaring, everyone's pounding, like
yeah,
it's just a mob scene. So
yeah.
those are some of my favorite clips to watch as well, especially like Patrick Kane going nuts. It's just
Oh
such
yeah,
a
I
cool
know.
sight.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
All right.
Couple
NFL.
couple honorable
Oh
mentions
yeah,
really
true, true.
quick. The old Detroit Arena, Joe Louis was great. The renovated one just doesn't quite have the same feel to it. Pittsburgh's a pretty cool one. Like another place that kind of has a different look to it when you watch on TV. And Vegas, surprisingly, I didn't really want to
Um,
put Vegas just because, I mean, it's a little unfair because it's so new, but um, a couple things with Vegas. It looks cool from the outside. The fans are nuts there. The fans are crazy. Um, they do all kinds of like crazy stuff before the game. And
mhm.
I just remember, similar to what we were just talking about with the United Center, when they played the Capitals in the Cup Finals, I was sitting there watching the game and just thinking, I cannot imagine being in a way like
Yeah,
a person on
yeah,
the visiting team here, and I don't think they have this in the home tunnel. I think this is only in the away tunnel. It's mirrored. So the walkway to the ice is mirrored so that when you're walking down, all it is, the ceiling's mirrored, the sides are mirrored, so it's just like you have. It feels like you're trapped basically, and
Oh
there's like strobe lights and stuff going on outside. So I imagine
man,
it must just feel like walking into the Coliseum or something. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
cannot imagine how intimidating that must be to go from this place where you're so isolated to the point where you're surrounded by yourself into this place where it's like, a Las Vegas nightclub essentially,
yeah,
and like people are going nuts. There's strobe lights. There's like like all
yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
crazy stuff going on. I just can't imagine how intimidating that must be.
Gotta be
So
crazy.
um, maybe we'll have to. I'll have to pull up the clip later for you to watch. But there's one entrance where I just remember watching it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how they win this game.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
the Capitals did end up winning that series, so good for them.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay, football. This one was tough for me. Why don't you
Yeah.
start off?
All right. This one, there are a couple in contention, but it honestly wasn't super hard for me to choose this one. And it's going to
Okay.
pain me to say it because I hate that I'm going to do this, but I'm being objective here. And it's important for me to note football, when I think of football, it's supposed to be a physical sport. And it's one of the best parts about football is the fact that it's like rain, snow, no matter the weather, cold, warm, we're playing this like we're playing. It's outdoors. It's
Uh-huh.
supposed to be played on grass. So as like a football purist, as sick as so many of these new stadiums are, they're indoors. It's like it's not football to me.
Right.
So when I think of football, there's a handful of stadiums that are like super simple when you look at them, but it's just outside and we're just like the stands, the walls, they just go up.
Yep.
And they create these insane environments to play. And so I think the best one is Arrowhead Stadium in
Oh,
Kansas City
I
Chiefs.
thought you were gonna say the one I have. I thought
Um,
at first, when you started talking, I was like, "Oh, he's going Arrowhead." And then the more you talked, I thought maybe you were talking yourself into the one I have.
yeah,
But you did go Arrowhead.
good.
Okay.
So Arrowhead, and I think if you watch enough football, and unfortunately the Chiefs run the league now, so like every year, all the AFC playoffs they go through Arrowhead.
Hmm.
Um, it seems so terrifying to play. Like the number of times you're watching and the opposing team on offense clearly cannot hear the play calls. Like
Hmm.
when you just think about how loud a stadium has to be, that you're wearing a helmet and you can't hear what someone is saying into you right there. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. But that's what Arrowhead is known for. I love the fact that it's a place where you play in the cold. They have bad weather. It's like peak football, peak playoff football, where it's so loud in Kansas City at night, cold, all these things. That's like what football is. And then it has the history with it too, right? The Kansas City Chiefs have been around forever. It seems like the most difficult place to play. It seems like the biggest home field advantage to me in the
Hmm.
NFL. And there's a lot of good ones, but it's just crazy. And so as much as I hate the Chiefs more than any other sports team that exists, and I hope that I never have to watch another playoff game at Arrowhead Stadium, at the same time, I love seeing the Chiefs lose at Arrowhead. So maybe I would. When the Patriots beat them in 2018 in overtime, all those fans, it's so loud, and they all just had to leave crying. It was beautiful. One of the most beautiful games I've ever watched. So being objective, I think it's the best stadium in the league, best home field advantage in the league.
I think besides Gillette, this is probably the one that I have been closest to in physical um distance,
Oh, because of
because
Royals.
it's in the same
Yeah,
parking lot.
I love when places do
Yeah,
that.
it's
There's a
really
lot. I
cool.
know Cleveland is like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Philly is awesome. Have you
they're all
ever
like
there? It's like they're all on one street basically.
wow. Yeah, I know Cleveland. So Cleveland, there's like, I don't know, basically like a park, but it's like this big pavement section that's literally connects. I'm forgetting the Cavs arena and then the baseball field,
Hmm.
right? Like if in left field, if you picture Progressive Field, they still call it that.
Yeah, I
There's
think.
like that big fence right out onto that like patio. Theoretically you could hit a home run, and
Right.
if it hits the ground and rolls, it will roll into the Cavs stadium.
Mm.
And then the football field is close by, but just down the road a little way. So it's kind of similar, but that's
Okay.
cool at Philly. It's all in the same street.
Yeah, because
I love
when I
that.
went to the Phillies game, it was like we parked in whatever lot, and then we're like walking to the stadium. It's like, oh, there's the hockey and basketball arena. There's whatever it's called, Lincoln Financial, I think.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then up and now here's Citizens Bank.
that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, Arrowhead's just like iconic, and obviously I think it's like a little different shaped as well. To
Mhm.
is it kind of like
Sort of
bowled
has like
out
a
almost?
wavy, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it was near the top of my list when I was thinking of it as well.
Mhm.
The one I chose my stadium for the same reasons, basically.
Yeah.
Like the indoor stadiums are nice. They're really cool. They obviously look really cool. They're nice new amenities, but
Mhm.
it kind of does lose that football feel.
Mhm.
So I went with, and this is one where I don't know if they've changed the name or not because I don't pay attention closely enough, but I know it
I
as
think
Ralph
Arrowhead
Wilson.
is,
Arrowhead has a sponsor now too. Yeah.
yeah. So, right,
I
go
went
ahead.
with Ralph Wilson Stadium or Field or whatever it is. I think it's one of those where they have like this stadium at this field, like whatever, but
Yeah.
Buffalo. There's nothing better than when you turn on CBS and maybe the Patriots are playing later or whatever, but you get that Buffalo 1 o'clock game and it looks like you're watching a hockey game because the whole field is covered in snow. Like there's
And
just
Buffalo fan, Bills
yeah,
Mafia is
Bills
insane.
Mafia is nuts. And like you said, it's not the craziest stadium. It's nothing
Relatively small
special.
one,
Yeah.
honestly.
And it's
Bills one.
maybe something about that too is just like it feels kind of personal. It feels
Hmm.
like you're kind of going there for a family event, maybe. Like I feel like a lot of them probably know each other. They probably have their
Hmm.
little tailgate buddies and their section buddies and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And you're going to watch two teams just battle it out. It may not be a pretty game because you might have some terrible weather, but they're showing up, they're playing, they're duking it out, whether or not they have hand warmers and gloves and whatever you want to call the neck gaiters and stuff like that.
Hmm.
They're going to show up. They're going to play. They might have to bring a snowplow on the field halfway through,
Hmm.
but that's football at its best, I think.
100%. Couldn't agree more. There's even like the videos of Bills getting back to like their parking lot, and it's like the car, you can't see their cars because it's just buried in snow. Like Buffalo is just wild.
Yeah.
And they don't have any other sports team out there for professionally. Or well, they have the
Sabres.
Sabres. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, they do. But are the Sabres still irrelevant? I feel like they've never been.
They're okay. They're pushing
Okay.
they're probably not going to make the playoffs this year, but
Yeah,
they're better than they have been
yeah.
recently. Yeah.
And it is cool as much as I hate the Bills. I mean, like, you have to admire the fans. Like, you lose
Mm-hmm.
to the Patriots like 25 something times in a row. They had, for some reason, the audacity to believe that they could actually beat the Patriots the next time. So it always made it interesting watching, which they never would, but it was always fun to watch Tom Brady play it basically his home field. But they're good now, and that
Yeah.
adds something to it because they've been bad our whole lives. So
Right.
now they have some electric players, super fun to watch.
And
And
plus the fans are nuts now
that's what I'm
because they've
saying.
been waiting so long.
Yeah. And like the fans have always been nuts, but now
Right.
that they're good, it's just heightened to another level. That's just
It's different when you have a bad franchise that
yeah,
gets good, that have
yeah,
had good fans when if you have good fans when you're bad, when
yeah,
you get good, like you better
yeah.
watch out.
And there's something, I'm gonna mess up the numbers, but Bills Mafia, their fans are just objectively the best fans in sports. I remember there
Mhm.
was something they did this year or recently, like it wasn't Damar Hamlin, but it was about like raising money for causes. And it was like the Bills fan base raised like 5 times more money than any other fan base. It was something
Wow.
ridiculous. And it's like opposing players, like they're just football is so important, like they go crazy. So
Yeah.
um I hate the Bills, but it's a great atmosphere for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's also one that I'm more familiar with because the
You've
Patriots
watched a
are in the
bunch.
same division. So
Yeah.
you see a lot. And then obviously they're like I was saying, like they're in the same time zone. So if the Patriots are on a bye week or if they're on like the 4 o'clock game or whatever,
You're gonna
like
see them a
that
lot.
is probably the game that we're getting.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any honorable mentions for football for you?
Yeah, so it's hard to argue against Lambeau Field. That's
True.
one that has a history, and it's another one that's football. Like
Yeah, true.
out there in Wisconsin, it's cold, the weather's gross. They've been so good for so long with their history. It's great. I think I don't know the actual name is I don't know. It's so Mile High Stadium in Denver.
Yeah.
They have a great one. It's another environment that's just tough to play.
Hmm.
Um, so those are the big ones that come to mind. Um, it was kind of choosing between those three
Yeah.
for me.
I like Seattle. The thing with
Oh,
Seattle
that's
is
such a good
obviously they
one.
don't have right, it's not natural grass, I don't think,
Yeah,
which
most fields aren't.
I don't love. And it is a little bit like spaceshipy. Like it's not
Yeah,
indoor, but it doesn't really feel
it
like
is.
a football stadium.
It's super unique. That's the most
Yeah.
unique field in the league. I mean, that whole there's like behind the end zone where it sort of comes to a point like this and it goes way up.
Yeah.
It is really cool. And I mean, the fact that they're like the total 12th man,
Yeah.
like Seattle is just,
Right.
especially when they had the Legion of Boom,
Hmm.
that's part of it. Like,
And like there
because
was a period of time where, if the Patriots or whatever, if the Patriots weren't the 4 o'clock game, the 4:25 game, there was a relatively high chance that you'd flip over to Fox after the Patriots or after whoever you watched at 1 o'clock, and you were getting the Seattle game
yeah,
because they were so good.
yeah. And it's something too about uh, a great defense goes better with a crowd
Yeah.
just because the way it works in football is when you're on offense, you want the crowd to be quieter, but then defense is just be as loud as possible, throw off the opposing offense. So when you have a great defense and the stadium is rocking, like
Yeah.
the Legion of Boom, they're hitting hard. It just
Yeah.
crazy atmosphere.
Plus, I think a big defensive play gets people more excited than a big offensive play because it's less frequent, probably.
Yeah, there's
So,
something.
you
A
know, a
big
big hit, a
interception.
big interception, it feels more sudden because you're not
Right.
expecting, as opposed to a big catch. You kind of like maybe you're not expecting them to make that catch, but you know that they're going to try to throw the
Mhm.
ball. You know, kind of what an outcome could be. Whereas an
Right. Right.
interception, sort of like it's not that
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, any others? I do, I do kind of like Heinz Field, or what used to be Heinz Field.
When they all have the towels going and it's
Yeah,
just that sea of yellow
yeah.
with the jersey, yeah, it's a good one.
They are also another place that can get some weather,
Yeah.
not as often, but on
Yeah.
occasion.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what it is, but I sort of like Tampa's Field. I feel like
Mhm.
it's sort of, for some
Yeah.
reason, it's just like, and part of it is like me sort of imagining it in my head, and I sort of add stuff to it almost, but it
Yeah.
just kind of feels
Yeah.
piratey, and it
I
kind of
mean
goes
the
with them.
whole
Like,
the pirate ship is pretty cool.
yeah,
Like
like it's a field that sort of fits. Like if you were going to make a field with a like themed around your team, it just feels kind of like it feels
yeah,
right, sort of.
that's
Whereas
fair.
like you're walking in to see a Bucks game, and you kind of feel like you're going into the pirate ship and this and that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of cool to me.
Yeah.
But
A lot of
yeah,
great ones.
so that's all we got for this one, right? All four sports.
Yeah. Want to each go through our four?
Yeah, for start from the beginning, obviously, because we did MLB a while ago. MLB, I have Oracle Park in San Francisco. NBA, I have Madison Square Garden. NHL, I have Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, and then football, I had Ralph Wilson in Buffalo.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, for me, I had Wrigley Field in Chicago for the Cubs. I had the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia for basketball for the 76ers. United Center for hockey, it's the Blackhawks. And then for football, I had Arrowhead Stadium out there in Kansas City for the Chiefs.
And not only did we go four different ones, we didn't even have any overlap in hockey and basketball.
I know.
Like we didn't go, one of us picked MSG for hockey and one for basketball or United Center or whatever, which could have easily happened.
Could have,
Um,
but yeah,
but it didn't.
yeah.
Are you,
Realistically, how many Boston would you have chosen?
um,
11.
two probably.
Baseball and what?
Baseball and basketball, I think.
Interesting. So not hockey.
I don't think as a hockey arena the Garden stands out as much.
Mm.
Just purely from a television viewing standpoint. Obviously, it's one that I'm most familiar with because I watch the most games, but I think I don't think if you were to watch like a highlight reel of all different hockey games, I don't think the Garden stands out that much in terms of
Mm.
broadcasting,
Okay.
like
Okay.
something like Madison Square Garden or Toronto or something like that does, in
Sure.
terms of like the way it looks just to the viewer.
Yeah.
Obviously, basketball, it's so the unique floor.
The floor is so great.
Green is such a nice little cut. Like when you have the white with the
Yeah.
green and just so classic. And then obviously Fenway is Fenway. So
Yeah. It's hard to argue.
yeah,
Yeah. Fenway and Celtics would be easy choices for me.
yeah.